All right, and again, we just want to welcome everyone, and we're going to start. We have our panelists, Mr. Lee Provost of the Daily Journal, Mr. Steve Nelson of WVLI, Attorney Imani Drew of the NACP. Our timer for the evening is Mr. Jess Gathen, and Mr. Provost, you will start. And again, all questions coming from the audience must be addressed to each candidate. Mr. Provost, you have we have an opening statement with Dr. Porter, followed by Mayor Epstein. Following question will be Mr. Provost, and the question will be going to the mayor. Mr. Porter, Dr. Porter.
Good evening. All right. Good evening. I would like to thank the Kankakee branch of the NAACP for this event. To the current mayor, I'm excited about this moment. My campaign is all about inclusion, transparency, fiscal responsibility, and development. I have a 5-point plan. It starts with 1, job creation and job readiness training. 2, economic development and urban renewal. 3, city build and community development. 4, e-strategy and technology development. And of course, number 5, the revitalization of Kankakee. About 3 years ago, I began researching the city of Kankakee and the internal governance of the city. However, to dispel any rumors, I have no desire to turn the city upside down or bottom side up. Furthermore, here's where my background meshes well with the new vision of the city of Kankakee. I have a bachelor's degree of business management from Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a master's of arts in teaching from Olivet Nazarene University, and my PhD in higher education administration with a minor in leadership from the Union Institute, Cincinnati, Ohio. Moreover, in 2004, I completed my dissertation, which essentially is your first book, about the city of Kankakee. Now, at that time, I had no idea that I would be sitting before you today talking about running for mayor. However, this brings me full circle with my own reality, having served the NAACP as educational chair, first vice president, second vice president. Tonight marks a pivotal point in my career. To this end, our campaign is not about bashing a mayor or the current officials, but it's about speaking to the differences in our philosophies, methods, agendas, while at the same time crafting a new vision and a new plan for the citizens of Kankakee. Thank you.
Mayor Epstein.
Thank you. I also would like to thank the NAACP. They've always held these forums, and they've been very informative, and for that we're appreciative. 4 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be elected the first woman mayor of the city of Kankakee. Prior to that election, I had served on the city council for 8 years as alderman of the 6th Ward. That experience was invaluable to me as I assumed the position of mayor. 4 years ago, I promised to keep the city fiscally sound. I have done that with the passage of 4 balanced budgets. I promised to begin to stabilize our neighborhoods. The city's Community Development Agency has received HUD grants totaling more than $10 million for neighborhood renewal and rehabilitation since 2009. I have developed a park where slum and blight once stood, have started a targeted demolition process to remove blighted properties from our neighborhoods, and have redevelopment plans for both the east and west sides of our community. In response to community concerns about public safety, our police officers now walk part of their beats on all shifts in all neighborhoods. We have seen $10 million in new commercial development at the shops of Meadowview, Exit 308, and downtown. Jobs are important to the vitality of a community. In the past 3 years, our industries have invested more than $55 million to expand their facilities, retaining the jobs we have and adding to our job base. The city was the first community in the county to secure lower ComEd rates for their residents, a savings of more than 48% off of their electric bills. We have made our downtown a popular gathering place with our expanded farmers market, fall art stroll, holiday celebrations, and our very successful Merchant Street Music Fest. We have accomplished much, and we have much left to accomplish. I look forward to tonight's debate. Thank you.
Mr. Provost, you have the first question. Mayor Epstein.
Kankakee, like many communities, is plagued with vacant, boarded up, and foreclosed properties. What can be done with these structures to get them reoccupied?
Well, I think first there's a misconception that the city owns those properties. The boarded up properties are usually the result of a foreclosure process, and many financial institutions own those properties. As in my opening comments, you saw where the city's Community Development Agency has worked very hard to secure HUD grants for the rehabilitation of those properties, the ones that we can acquire either through a foreclosure process or ones that we are able to purchase through HUD itself. That money is equally distributed throughout the wards, and we are currently in the process of rehabbing 4 homes scattered throughout the city. Once they're rehabbed, they will be sold at market rates in order to take that money and repurpose it and continue the rehabilitation process.
Dr. Porter.
We have an affordable housing plan that puts people to work, reduces board ups, but doesn't start with a bulldozer. If we work in collaboration with the banks, the landlords, and some of the other individuals, we can reduce the number of board ups that we see, make the homes affordable, offer them to single-family dwellings, and increase the entire prosperity of the city. Remember, every time we tear down a building or a home, our taxes go up.
Mr. Nelson, you have the question that goes to Dr. Porter.
You've just been elected mayor. Give me your vision for the next 4 years where you want to see Kankakee at the end of your first term.
I like that thought process. We have an economic development plan that focuses on rail, the airport, logistics, the river, military, medical, the bioscience, and the biotechnology fields. It is my hope and desire as an elected mayor to start with the basics. Some of these abandoned warehouses, some of these abandoned factories, and these abandoned buildings with some of the money that's allocated from the economic development arm, as well as the community development improvement part of the city budget, can be used to rehab these facilities, to make the city look aesthetically pleasing, to put people back to work and bring Kankakee back to the city that it used to be, and then take it to a new level.
Dr. Porter, with that, can you elaborate a little more on that particular plan, on how you plan on really promoting that?
Well, our economic plan is real simple. It speaks to the importance of developing the river, one of our greatest assets. It's not being utilized the way that it should. If we want the city to grow economically, we have to market and package the best assets so we can recruit, retain, and grow businesses that are already here. What you see is a mass exodus of businesses that used to be here that are now in Bourbonnais and Bradley. We have to stop that trend, and the only way that we can do it is to have a plan. And it speaks to real simple, if you don't have a plan, at some point, eventually you'll have a problem.
Mayor, and you can also elaborate a little further beyond the question.
Okay, thank you. If I'm reelected, the first thing that either person will have to do is actually craft the city's budget. That's absolutely the first thing that has to be done prior to summer. Second of all, we have several projects that are currently on the books. We have a $20 million Mercy housing project in conjunction with Provena St. Mary's Hospital. Sorry, I still say Provena. It's going to take a while to do presents. That plan is with Mercy Housing. It is a $20 million senior living center that will have a clinic on the main level. It's part of a redevelopment of what we call the West Downtown area. That is a plan that has been adopted by the City Council. It also includes a grant that we have before FEMA in order to mitigate. There's many homes that are on the floodplain from Washington Avenue Bridge all the way around the river to Station Street. We currently have a grant to acquire and demo those homes in order to make open space and parkland and open up the riverfront. In addition, a developer has purchased the Kmart property at Exit 312, And so right now, those are the first initiatives that we have planned that are on the books currently, that are in the works, and I'd like to start with that and to move forward.
Question, Attorney Drew. Question go to Mayor Epstein.
What is the most pressing issue for the city?
The most pressing issue for the city continues to be, and I know I sound like a broken record, our finances. The public safety budget out of the general fund consumes 42%. If the city's finances are not stable, then obviously the services to the residents must suffer. We're in a continual program where the state of Illinois continues to try to take money from the municipalities. In the IML Journal today, there's a piece of legislation before the Senate in Springfield that they want to take a portion of each community's sales tax in order to balance the budget for the state of Illinois. Health insurance, we've just negotiated our health insurance premiums are going up 10%. That equates, it may not sound like a lot of money, but it equates to $250,000. As the state looks for ways to balance their budget, they look to the municipalities because they know that they are that much more removed from the citizens of Illinois. So quite honestly, the most pressing plan, because it is the base of everything, are the finances.
Dr. Porter.
I think the most pressing issue for the city of Kankakee starts and ends with jobs. All of our issues stem from the lack thereof. You have individuals that are in the community that cannot find work and often have to drive out of the community for their employment. I, such as myself, am one of those individuals, and it speaks to the need of creative job creation in our city. And I think part two of that would be crime. People are fearful, and a gentleman said earlier today on the Aldermatic Forum that there are a lot of alarm signs and alarm type of things in people's homes. And so the mayor speaks to reducing crime and actually putting foot patrol as part of the police department's activity. But here's what happened. The foot patrol didn't start until after we already had a problem, till we had 2 murders. So it becomes reactionary. We need visionary leadership. We need individuals to speak to the specific needs of what's happening right now. So jobs and crime go hand in hand. I think it's part one, part two of the most pressing needs. The budget will be balanced based upon the economic development that we provide for the city. Thank you.
Question to Mr. Porter. What position or plan do you have to address the pending lawsuit from RTA, the City of Chicago, and the county as relates to the loss of the sharing tax revenue that we have along with the county, which we're talking about approximate loss of $4 million?
In the latest information that I read in the Tribune, they actually cited it as being $5 million. But my desire as your next elected official is not to lose any money. I am well aware of the information that's been reported. The reality is that we cannot continue to allow dollars to be taken from the budget and expect for us to offer the same services and resources to all citizens in the city of Kankakee. It is my hope, aim, and desire to end the lawsuit so that we don't have to deal with this issue for the next 4 years.
Okay, and how we plan on addressing the pending lawsuit with the RTA, City of Chicago, and Cook County? Yes, go ahead. We got time.
Okay, it starts with transparency. The issue that the Sun-Times as well as the Tribune reported is, according to their sources, they've, through the Freedom of Information Act, have requested information about the businesses that were allegedly located in the city of Kankakee but actually are housed in Cook County and Chicago. So in being a transparent government or style of leadership, why not give them the information that they asked for? And if we have nothing to hide, then let's start with that as the beginning. Part two of that is, why not try to recruit those individuals to actually come here and exist so that it's not a shell game, so it's not an illusion. They actually have their headquarters or their foundation in the city of Kankakee with the opportunity to employ more citizens in the city of Kankakee, so it's a win-win for everybody.
Mayor, you have the same question, and we have time.
Thank you. First of all, for anyone to be running for the office of mayor and consider that our sales tax sharing agreements are a shell game, it only shows that they are absolutely unknowledgeable about that program. These businesses source their sales through the city of Kankakee. Their corporations are not here. Their warehouses are not here. They have a sales office where their sales are sourced. We are transparent, but there's proprietary information that any retailer does not want disclosed. You can't even get it from the Department of Revenue. They will never disclose the retail sales of any merchant in the state of Illinois because that is considered information that can be used against them by their competitors. The lawsuits, the first issue that I have, this is a really close to my heart issue because I've been fighting this for 2.5 years. If anyone believes a press release or a lawsuit that's filed by the RTA, then they're foolish. We have disclosed everything that has been required of us. We have disclosed it in the lawsuits. We have disclosed it in the FOIAs. The RTA wants additional information in order to publish those retailers' names on their website, in order to force those retailers to undergo audits by the Department of Revenue and to leave the program. This is a serious, serious issue and one that requires an incredible amount of expertise. If it was easy to stop these lawsuits, I would be the first person to do that. But I will fight until a court tells me otherwise, and you must understand 2 courts have upheld these programs. 2 courts. It is now to the Illinois Supreme Court because the RTA refuses to abide by lower court decisions. This is $4 million for the city of Kankakee, and it's $4 million for Kankakee County. And if anyone feels that you are going to go unscathed if we lose that revenue, then you're foolish. This is a serious problem. It's probably one of the most serious problems facing the city of Kankakee today. Excuse me.
You get 30 seconds. No, it's done. Mr. Provost, you have the question, and the question goes to the mayor.
How long have you lived in the city of Kankakee, and what is your personal investment in the city of Kankakee?
How old I am. I was born and raised here. I'm 65 years old, so I've lived here for 65 years, except when I went away to college and my husband was in dental school. I'm fully invested in this community. I have served in multiple capacities. When we first moved back here, we didn't have children. I served on a lot of volunteer boards. My husband and I, our children, our daughter went through Kankakee schools. We were active in the school system. We mentor in the business academy. I've been an integral part of this community for many years. I ran for office 12 years ago, never intending to be in politics, but I was asked to run for alderman. I've enjoyed those 8 years on the council. I've enjoyed being mayor for 4 years. So for 65 years, I've been an integral part of this community.
Dr. Porter.
Yes, I've lived in the city for about 2.5 to 3 years. My investment starts and ends with the fact that I've been a teacher, a coach, a mentor, as well as a parent. My son attends School District 111. I actually did my student teaching at District 111 in the history department under Mr. Ron Jean. My investment is real simple. We need to make sure that I often think about my son in questions like this, that we have something for the children in the future. We need to make sure that they have opportunities here. And he's going to college. He knows that. So once he goes to college and comes back, he needs to be able to be employed in the city in which he lives.
Mr. Nelson, you have the question, and the question is to Mr. Porter, Dr. Porter.
Being in the media, we often employ what's known as promotional tactics. If we were to take that to the city level, how can we change the perception of the city so that more people will want to come here?
That's a great question. You start with marketing and highlighting your best assets. Outside of rail, outside of the airport, outside of the river, we have some great citizens here in the city. We don't need to go outside of our city to look for the resources. They're all right here. So let's package those resources and market them. The question really should be, why haven't we done that before now? We've had ample opportunity. Once again, the river has always been there as long as Kankakee has. And when you look at our downtown area, if you look at the historical reference, there's so much to be said about the options that are available for citizens in this city. So we package that by going to Chicago, by trying to recruit those businesses here, by going to Las Vegas Trade Show and showing the world that Kankakee is a great place to live, a great place to work, and once we develop the river, it'll be a great place to play as well.
I think one of the ways that you market a community is to provide what I call quality of life events for people to understand what a great community we have. When I took office 4 years ago, the first thing I did was to create an events partnership to truly raise the standard of the events that are promoted in the city of Kankakee. We've done that. Partnerships are a huge part of what I like to do because I feel that one person certainly doesn't have the answers, and the more you collaborate with different organizations, the better the product is. I think the culmination of that was Merchant Street Music Fest. When was the last time you had 12,000 people downtown Kankakee with fireworks, and those people came from everywhere? And the comment that I heard over and over was, I can't believe this is Kankakee. And the comment is, believe it. I think we need to believe in ourselves. Our downtown is looking better. We've done the historic signage. I've only heard 2 complaints about the signage, so that's not too bad when you do a major project. So you're oops, sorry. Thank you.
Attorney Drew.
Let's talk about a topic
Question to Mayor Epstein. Sorry, go ahead.
That's popular nationally. What is or will be your response to gun violence in Kankakee?
Well, I think violence on any level is abhorrent. We just did our crime statistics for the year 2012. That's obviously the most current available. Actually, our crime statistics dropped 99 points over the past year. Violence is a product of poor education, poor opportunities. I think we must have the message to our children that they need to educate. I think as a community we need to have education be the focus because poverty leads to crime. And we have a police department that does a fabulous job. I know Dr. Porter said it was reactive to have cops walking the beat. Well, the city of Chicago just came up with that same idea. Actually, it wasn't reactive. The community forum that I led here with all of the pastors of the community, actually that idea came from them. They wanted the police to be more visible. And within 2 weeks, we had a program crafted that now they walk every shift, every beat, every neighborhood. It's had a tremendous effect already because it gives them the opportunity to engage the people, and it gives the people the opportunity to engage the police officers. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Provost, you have a question, and the question is to, Dr. Porter, you have a question.
Yeah, my response to gun violence is real simple. We need to focus on ways to not only educate citizens about gun violence, but it's the violence before individuals get their hands on guns that needs to be talked about as well. I think with the domestic, Victims Assistance Center, the city has some great things going on. We just need to expand that. We need to make sure that we empower citizens to understand their value, and so they can have a strong identity as it relates to self-worth, that they don't seek to destroy and harm others. That can be done at the elementary level, at the secondary level, and it could be a collaboration initiative with the city as well as with the school district. And then you bring in Aunt Martha's, you bring in a St. Mary's, you bring in a Riverside, and now no one entity has to share the burden financially of providing these educational programs. It can be a collaborative effort.
Question, let's stay on gun violence. The tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School has brought up the important issues again about school safety. Dr. Porter, how should the city support our schools in their mission to keep our students safe?
Well, as an educator, this is very near and dear to my heart. We have to make sure that we empower the students, the staff, and the particular building so that it becomes a safe opportunity for everyone. It starts and ends with how you embrace the culture. For example, I've visited the high school, and I noticed that there's a disconnect. Students are allowed to carry backpacks. They're allowed to move around with things in their pockets, like iPhones, phones. In my particular district, we're not allowed to do that because that creates an opportunity for violence to happen. So if we put those in a locker, if we stop them from carrying the big purses, once again, preventive. After the problem happens, then we'll be having conversations about how we could have prevented it. So let's start at the beginning with empowering our staff to do their job and make sure that all citizens and students are safe Monday through Friday, as well as Saturday and Sunday.
Mayor Epstein.
First of all, I think it's important to understand that the city and the school district are two totally separate government entities. But that said, we work very closely with them. The police department has done citizens police academies. We call them teen police academies in the schools. Our police officers meet on a continual basis with District 111 personnel for safety plans for the schools. You'll see many of our officers, our resource officers, in those same buildings. Again, it allows them to have relationships with the children. So we are very proactive in our communication and collaboration with the District 111. But as far as any rules or regulations that they put upon the 5,600 students that attend those buildings, that's truly something for the school board and District 111 administration.
Mr. Provost, you have the question. The questions to Mayor Epstein.
What strategies do you have to better incorporate the city's growing Hispanic population into city government?
Well, I've had several meetings with members of the Hispanic community. We have established a Mayor's Hispanic Advisory Council. I think the Hispanic community is one of our largest growing populations. They have the same concerns that we all have: safety, jobs, and how to be better incorporated into the fabric of the city of Kankakee. We have plans to meet with them. They have issues that are unique because of the language barriers. We do have, and many of our departments in the city of Kankakee already have Hispanic employees, so we're trying to use their skills in order to work with the residents of that particular community to make them feel that they are wanted and included in the city.
Dr. Porter.
At present, Team Porter has already reached out to the Hispanic population, and there are many individuals working in our efforts, in our campaign, and that will continue once elected. I don't believe that you start something just for the moment or the season. Reaching out to minorities should be a part of your mission, and it should not be something that's trendy or a response to a specific question. I think it's necessary to look beyond language barrier. The district and as well as the city has programs designed for that. However, let's look at what has happened as relates to the Hispanic population and their needs being met and being served. It speaks to commitment. It's one thing to announce it, pronounce it. It's another thing to provide dollars and resources to improve it.
Mr. Nelson, you have the next question, and the question is to Dr. Porter.
In state government, we're watching the issue of employee pensions pretty much destroy the finances of the state. Looking ahead, will we have a similar problem here?
Absolutely not. The foundation of pension development starts with forecasting and planning. Your economic forecasting arm should be able to project to a degree of maybe a standard deviation of 0.5 or 0.4% error to make sure that the dollars, the future dollars, are available for citizens. If they've earned the money, they deserve the money. And we're not going to compromise the integrity of the city based upon what we perceive to be a shortfall. I am once again, as I look at the state pensions as it relates to state employees, that's an issue that should not even be discussed at the local level because we should not have those same kinds of problems. We're a small city, 27,000 citizens rounded. We should never be in a situation where we have to pull from one department to pay another department.
Mayor Steen.
Actually, the payments for the police and fire department, which are the most significant, total probably more than $4 million a year. For many years, in previous administrations, those pensions were not fully funded, a similar issue that has occurred in the state of Illinois. The city of Kankakee is under a consent decree to fully fund those pensions each year, and we do so and have done so for at least 12 years. That money comes from the property tax levy. It doesn't come from the general fund and actually has no effect on the operating costs of the city. But it certainly does have an effect on the property taxes for the residents of the city of Kankakee. But as long as we are mandated, and we certainly have the moral obligation to fund those pensions, we will do so. But it becomes more and more difficult because for years of not funding, it becomes much more harder to fully sustain that 100% level. But we have done so. We will continue to do so. And it is an issue that is problematic.
Attorney Drew, you have a question and questions to Mayor Epstein.
What role, if any, should the city play in addressing the problems felons face in returning back to the city from prison?
I think that reentry into the city of Kankakee or any municipality is difficult for anyone who has served time in the prison system. What should the city do? I think there are social service agencies that are that have retraining efforts. I know the parole department has retraining efforts. It's a problem. We seem to have more people that are paroled to the city of Kankakee than we send to the Department of Corrections. I find that to be problematic, quite frankly. These are difficult times. We have people that do not have records that have a difficult time finding jobs. So obviously job retraining for those people I think are very, very important. We've talked about job training a little bit, and I'll probably address that at a later question. But what efforts do we have as a city? You have to understand that any program that the city initiates is done with one funding source, and that's taxpayer dollars.
Dr. Porter.
I definitely believe that the city should take a proactive role in embracing all citizens, not just individuals that have been incarcerated, but citizens that haven't been, that can't find employment. However, for individuals that have been incarcerated and returned to the city, there's a greater propensity that they will commit another crime if they're not gainfully employed, or having the opportunity to develop their skills to a point where it improves their lot in life. So KCC has job readiness programs already in place, along with the county with their reentry program. And I think it's all about collaboration and partnerships. Let's work together. When we work together, once again, nobody has to bear the burden of the sole responsibility. It becomes a mutual trust, a mutual relationship, and everybody benefits thereby.
Mr. Provost, you have the question to Dr. Porter.
Do you envision leadership changes within the police, fire, and or code enforcement departments?
You know, as I'm walking the streets, that's the number one question that I get asked. what's going to happen with the if you were elected mayor, what would you do? I want to say publicly again, for the record, I have no desire, once elected as mayor, to fire everybody. That's a misnomer. What I will focus on is skill set and ability and production in particular positions. Are individuals qualified to hold these positions? And it's not based upon previous administrations. It's based upon productivity. There are some things that need to change, and it doesn't matter who's in that position. Change is what we're focusing on, and so we need to make services for citizens more palatable. And in so doing that, if individuals can share the vision as the elected mayor, if I'm that individual, then that's how it will be. So it's not changing the person, it's changing the vision, and it's changing the focus of that particular department.
Mayor Epstein?
I think I can answer that very simply. These are the people that I've put in place for the past 4 years. I've had the unfortunate experience to have to fire some of the people that I put in place originally because they did not perform to the level that I expected. The department heads that we currently have are extremely well qualified and proficient in their particular skill sets. That's the way we hire people, because ultimately they are the people who run the city, and you expect them to have the highest excellence as far as job credentials. If a new mayor is elected, all of the department heads must submit their resignations. That's by law. So the entire staff must resign, and then it's up to the new mayor to appoint either the previous people or to put his or her own people in place.
Attorney Drew, you have the question. I'm sorry, Mr. And it goes to Mayor Epstein.
Yes, he's deferring to me. What can be done, or what would you do or are doing to address the concerns of our youth and teenagers that say, we just don't have anything to do, any place to go, just to hang out? So what else are we going to do? We may get into trouble if we don't have any place to go. So what do you say or have to say to the youth in the community?
Well, unfortunately, I think having raised a child, having been a child, I think that's an age-old comment by kids. There's just nothing to do here. If only I lived someplace else, there'd be a lot more to do. There is a lot to do in this community. First of all, the Park District has just taken possession of the Resource Center. They're going to spend $1.5 million to provide youth services, all types of programming, educational, recreational programming at the Resource Center in downtown Kankakee. It was chosen because of its location, because it's so easily accessible by so many of our youth. The Kankakee Valley Park District has, I think the last time I saw, like over 300 types of activities for youth. We have a YMCA, we have a YWCA. The city does have a summer youth program. We do hire some children for our Public Works Department. I think it goes back to the public library that we're in right here. Thank you, Steve. Offers a wide variety of programming for children from toddler to teenagers.
Dr. Porter?
I think the number one concern as it relates to youth is the cost of programs. We need to make sure that when we provide programs that they're accessible to all citizens, more specifically for that single mother that has 4 or 5 children. If you attach the Park District has wonderful programs, and when you attach a $20, $30, $40 fee to these programs, then a single mother with 3 or 4 kids can't avail her children to that. That's where, once again, through Community Reinvestment Act, we work with some of the banks, we work with some of these businesses to provide the resources so that the youth can have programs that they want, activities that they want. I think when you start talking about youth first, you must talk to the youth. They know what they need. The problem is sometimes adults are trying to craft and design programs for individuals that they don't have a true understanding of. Talk to the experts, the youth. So when we empower them to be part of the decision-making process, I think the programs, the outcome will be a benefit for everybody.
Dr. Porter, what are your capital funding priorities, and how should they be paid for? We're going to get into finance, and again, the question is about capital funding priorities that you would have when elected, and how should they be paid for?
It starts with crafting and designing a Riverwalk program, and we're looking at those dollars that have been allocated for economic development and community development to fund the initial stages. You can't do any capital project in one big chunk. You roll it out in phases and stages, and so our first initial phase-in or rollout program will be the feasibility studies, looking at ways to, once again, improve the Riverwalk area to make it aesthetically pleasing and to make it a viable option for the city. And then to look at ways to encourage collaboration and possibly bringing rail from University Park down to Kankakee. That could be jobs, unlimited amount of jobs. And something that nobody's talking about that becomes the sore spot in the room is this third airport that is coming at some point.
Mayor Epstein.
You're talking about capital projects and their funding?
Yes.
This is a sort of a two-part answer. Part of the capital projects that we have initiated, the Mercy Housing Project, the river rehabilitation, there are either private investors or we've gone after grant money. The city does not have, and this is a misconception again that I've been hearing, the last figure was $5 million on economic development that we spend each year. Again, that dollar figure in the budget is the sales tax rebate money that we give to our retailers. That is not money that is spent on economic development in the city of Kankakee. The city bonds every 3 or 4 years for capital projects. That's your street overlays, your sewers, your sidewalks, your curbs. Those infrastructure projects are paid for by bonded money that is paid back over 20 or 25 years.
Mayor Epstein, next question. We're talking about loss of revenue. We're talking about jobs. We're talking about possibly the loss of $4 million with the tax revenue sharing with RTA in the city of Chicago and Cook County. Armstrong World Industry, let's elaborate on that for a minute as it relates to the tax appeal that we're faced with Armstrong Industry.
Well, industries are no different than residences. With the economic downturn that the entire country has faced, some lawyers have made a cottage industry now of approaching industries in all communities, not just here, to lower their property taxes. And while that may seem sort of like a great idea when you have a house and you'd like to lower your taxes a bit, when the industries go and try to lower their taxes, Armstrong, sadly, is a perfect example. They would like to reduce their taxes 66%. 66% is an incredible amount, and those appeals, the appeal of those taxes, are heard at PTAB. So that is totally out of the city's hands, although we certainly are aggressive in fighting those appeals, and we partner with the school district because if the city loses money, the school district actually has a bigger impact on your property taxes than the city's taxes. So we partner aggressively to fight any industry that is currently appealing their property taxes.
Dr. Porter.
It becomes necessary when you talk about appeals to start at the beginning. How did they arrive in the fiscal shape that they are currently in? And in looking at that, it becomes necessary then to work in, once again, what I always term to be a proactive position or stance. Armstrong World Industries, as cited by the Kankakee website, is one of the larger employers for the city of Kankakee. So it's necessary for the city to support them in whatever ways they can, and to make sure that whatever resources we can provide, whatever support we can provide, because we need to keep them, or what will eventually happen, they'll be like Court Street Ford, Taylor Dodge, Big Lots, and some of the other businesses that have left the city.
Mr. Pace, may I respond or no?
I will give him a rebuttal. Yes, you
Okay.
can.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate Armstrong World Industries like I appreciate all the industries, many of which in this county are located in the city of Kankakee. I'd like to just give you a little bit of background about this property tax appeal with Armstrong. Many years ago, under the administration of Don Green, Armstrong came to the city of Kankakee and said, we need to do an expansion. We want to save the jobs that we have, and we would like to create more jobs. And that administration said, what can we do to help you? And they said, you can take out a bond, a loan, give us the money so we can do the expansion because we don't have the money to do it right now ourselves. And we said, absolutely, if it means keeping those jobs in our community, we're going to do that. That bond, that loan, is paid back by their property taxes. If they reduce their property taxes to the level that there's not enough money to pay back that loan, guess who pays it back? The property taxpayers that are sitting in this room. So we are very, very much in collaboration with our industries. But I can't sit back and let an industry that benefited by the loans that were made to them by the city of Kankakee to keep the jobs reduce their property taxes to the point where it doesn't pay back the loan. That's not acceptable.
Dr. Porter, you can rebuttal.
Once again, it becomes necessary to speak to the issue of collaboration and working with the particular industry. Now, the mayor has spoke about the fact that there was some initial agreements set aside, and as a citizen, I don't remember reading about any of that information in the paper to be knowledgeable of what she's talking about. So there's an issue there, but specifically, if money is owed and it's required by law as these contracts are signed, then they should pay, and it shouldn't handicap the city. I'm in agreement with that. It shouldn't be to the point where it puts citizens in a economic hardship, an additional economic hardship, because we're currently in that. And I want to make sure that as your elected official, that we make individuals accountable to the city, accountable to the citizens, and that nobody is trying to line their pockets and grow fat off taxpayers' dollars.
Question, Dr. Porter, and what we're going to do, because that particular funding of Armstrong World Industry was tax increment funding and financing, which was approximately expansion of 30 jobs that was actually, I felt, maybe should have been dealt with people from the city of Kankakee. So with that, how can we benefit from TIFs 1, 2? I want to tie your job readiness program to this. So let's replay this, rewind it. Here we got Armstrong World Industries is going to expand, going to bring 30 jobs to their industry. So let's do the job readiness and the funding there. So that's the scenario, how we can deal with that.
Starting at the beginning with the TIF, if the value added, and that's what we have to look at for the TIF, is 30 jobs, then we need to look at redesigning that TIF. It should be a larger allocation if we're going to enter into an extended collaborative corporate agreement with Armstrong World Industry. Additionally, we need to make sure that if we're going to write the language, that we're specific about what the TIF entails. You spoke to the need of making sure individuals from the city of Kankakee are hired. Well, let's put a percentage on that. Let's put a number and then hold them to that. If you don't ask, you don't receive. And usually what happens with TIFs, after the TIF is over, the entities either leave or they renege on some of the promises that they were made initially in writing. So accountability is essential as it relates to Armstrong World, and the job readiness program speaks to that need. Who better to tell us what skills, resources, and abilities are necessary to work at Armstrong World than Armstrong World? So let's craft programs around that. As an educator, I would be happy to write that curriculum so that all individuals will be gainfully employed.
Mayor Epstein.
I believe your question, Mr. Pace, is the benefit of a TIF. Is that where
benefit of the TIF. In particular, I was just dealing with
Armstrong
yes,
again? Okay.
Correct.
The tax increment, meaning you start at a level and then as you increase the value of your property, that increased property taxes goes into the TIF to pay off the debt. That debt is a bond. You cannot, by law, put any kind of a recourse into a bond when it's out on the bond market because it negates the tax value of that bond. So you cannot say you must pay this back. That's illegal. You cannot do that. TIFs are useful. I believe if you were here for the aldermanic debate, you understood from Mr. Curtis that communities everywhere have TIFs. If you choose not to have one, then you're putting yourself at a disadvantage as you go seek businesses from, to come here to this community. If done properly, they work fine. The misuse of TIFs, I think, is widely known. They were meant for slum and blighted properties. The state gave you that ability to turn a piece of property that was blighted into one that had value, and they gave you the TIF as a tool. What happened, communities took that tool and misused it and turned prime property into TIFs and started giving away tax dollars. People in the TIFs pay their taxes. It's a misnomer that they do not pay taxes. They pay taxes, but it goes into the TIF for infrastructure work within that TIF.
Mr. Provost, question to Mayor Epstein.
What do you consider the top 2 roadblocks to city development? And as a follow-up to that, how can those roadblocks be removed?
To economic development,
Yes.
Is that your question?
Yes, that's my question.
One of the roadblocks that we've seen a little bit, but it is actually starting to improve, is the lack of financing options for private development. The Mercy Housing Project has private money, but they are a superb entity, and so they have access to redevelopment funds. In the finance world today, it's very difficult to access capital. And that is problematic because, quite frankly, the city can provide infrastructure, they can facilitate improvement, but the city cannot pay for those improvements. We cannot build the Walmarts. We cannot build the Love's truck stops. You need private capital in order to do that. You saw the shops at Meadowview. The city provided the capability for that to happen, but you needed private developers to come here. Centru Bank was the prime lending institution for that development. And so I think the biggest roadblock right now nationally is the access to capital.
Dr. Porter?
Ms. Provost, could you repeat that question?
What do you consider the top 2 roadblocks to city development, and how can those roadblocks be removed?
I think the major roadblock right now would be speaking to private investors coming in and looking to build and upgrade and develop the city. But you have to ask, and you have to market the city in such a way that they can't say no. You talk to any salesperson, they're only as good as their current sale and the next opportunity. So if we want private investors to come, we have to give them a reason to come. And let's incentivize the opportunities to the point that, once again, they won't say no. And in so doing that, we have to market our city in such a way that we speak to the best and the greatest that we have to offer. And it is my belief, once that's done, we recognize nationally that currently economic times are hard. However, that can't be an excuse for quality of life for citizens that deserve better.
Mr. Nelson, you have the next question. The question is to Dr. Porter.
Recently, the city went through a tough time. Revenues were down, and some very hard decisions had to be made about cutbacks, and that included laying people off from their city jobs. We're in the future now. The same thing has occurred. Where do you cut? What do you keep?
When it comes to cutting, consolidating, and layoffs, those are definitely unpopular items. But as any leader, you have to make those tough decisions. It starts with those services or opportunities of duplication. We look at providing even value added. What is essential? Those items that are essential, they're prioritized, and those items that we can maybe, not necessarily do without, but we can get by with for a moment, we can look at cutting those. Specifically, you can't cut services for citizens because that's what their taxes are paying for. So it never becomes a popular or ideal situation. However, in tough times, we need to look at dealing specifically with the unions and concessions and who would be willing to take less so that everybody can stay employed.
Attorney Drew, you have the question. Sorry. Go ahead, Mayor. And Drew next.
Thank you. Those are tough decisions to make, and I've had to make them. Going to 6 unions and asking for concessions, if any of you have ever negotiated one union contract, you can understand what it's like to negotiate 6 of them. And unfortunately, even though we may think so, taking a little bit less so everyone can keep their jobs isn't exactly the mentality that you get sometimes with employees. We've consolidated departments since I've been mayor. We have 25% fewer departments than we had when we started 4 years ago. We have combined departments. We have laid off people, one of the most difficult things you have to do. I think we're running a very lean government operation at this time. We look for revenue streams. We look at multiple ways to balance the budget, but ultimately, if the times are tough, and I don't expect that to happen because, quite frankly, this year we've done 4 balanced budgets. We had a surplus this year. We intend to balance the budget this year and come in with a slight surplus. So I think you just have to manage the finances. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not looking, Jess.
Attorney Drew, you have the question to Mayor Epstein.
What do you think is the most difficult aspect of being mayor?
The responsibility that you have for a $26 million business that employs 300 people and takes care of the residents, 27,000 residents. It's a truly all-encompassing job. It is difficult because there are so many outside influences that impact your city that you have no control over. I'm a control freak. The things that we can control, we manage very well. But as you look at the state of Illinois, when you look at lawsuits from the RTA with deep pockets, those are things you can't control, and that's the most discouraging. It's a very difficult job, and it is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job. And that's the most difficult, the things that you have no control over but that have a significant impact on your community.
Dr. Porter.
Well, having never been mayor, this question it would be something from a projected reality. I believe that a challenge would be just in what has already been stated. I welcome that. I'm young. I don't sleep much. So working 24 hours, 7 days a week is something that is exciting to me, more especially when we start to incorporate technology. And then to work with some of the great citizens and aldermen on board, I think will help ease some of the ills of the job. Every job comes with, its highs and its lows, but you don't go into public service looking for an easy route. You go into public service looking to make a difference, and if making a difference means that I have to put in extra time, I've proven over the years that I can do that I've done that, and it's just exciting to me. Troubleshooting, finding ways to eradicate problems is something that I look forward to and I get excited about.
And there's a piggyback to that particular question because there is a big project that we're having in the city. Dr. Porter, what information do you have regarding the upcoming construction project at Karma? and how would you work to ensure that local contractors and minorities are included in the bid process? Testing. What information do you have regarding the upcoming construction project at Karma, and how will you work to ensure that local contractors and minorities are included in the bid process?
Well, it's important to start with something that has been a hallmark of all my comments, and that is collaboration. Speaking to part 2 and part 3 of what you're saying, to make sure that citizens and minority vendors are included, we have to make sure that the vendors are qualified for minority status, and that their bid and their documentation is in place so that they can qualify for the particular bids. I don't know that you can do more as a city other than that to encourage minority vendors to participate. But it's essential that any major project starts and ends with the citizens in which the project is located. Citizens from Kankakee should be able to work on these projects, and that speaks to, once again, going back to my job training and job readiness program. If we know that project is coming within the next 2 to 3 years or next whatever, well, let's get the citizens trained so that they'll have the skills, resources, and services ready to meet those jobs as they become available.
Mayor.
The projects at Karma, actually there's 3 phases of projects that will total about $50 million. The funding for those projects comes from the federal government, and they have very strict criteria that local governments cannot supersede as far as the bid process goes. But that said, there are 4 mayors that sit on the Karma board: Kankakee, Bradley, Bourbonnais, and Aroma Park, and we were committed that local vendors get some of those jobs. And so when the general contractors were awarded the bids, I'm very pleased to say that certain phases of all those projects have now been let to subcontractors that are local. So we made sure that happened because obviously we understand as much as anyone the importance of providing those jobs to our local residents.
Mr. Provost, you have a question, and the question is to Mayor Epstein or Mr. Nelson, either one. Whoever the question.
Okay, this is a 2-part question. One is for the mayor, obviously, but the other part will be for Jarman. What existing problem do you wish you could have addressed in a better fashion, and how would you deal with that in your second term? And the first part of that question for Jarman would be, when you look at the city's current administration, give an example of something that it has failed to address, and how you would address that issue. So are we clear on that?
Okay, so the first part is a problem that I wish I would have addressed differently?
Yes, in a different fashion.
Okay. I think one of the most contentious issues that came before the City Council was when we implemented charging for rental licenses. The city has always done inspections for rental properties, but quite frankly, that is a cost to the taxpayer of hundreds of thousands of dollars, because those inspectors obviously inspect rental properties. Properties that are for rent are businesses. And we implemented a $10 a unit fee for that service. And my goodness, the world just went up for grabs. So I think what we could have done better was to speak to the landlords, educate them to the process, get their cooperative efforts. We did meet with the landlords associations, but obviously we were not successful enough in letting them understand why we had to do the charge. My belief is every city service that we provide should be self-supporting, meaning taxpayers should not provide taxpayer dollars for services that benefit other people, especially businesses. Those initiatives should be self-supporting. So by charging a fee, it made that job from the code department self-sufficient.
Be mindful, and this will be the last question of the night. Next question, I got it. Going to Dr. Porter.
Could you repeat that question for my part?
When you look at the city's current administration, give an example of something that it has failed to address and how you would be addressing that issue.
Well, I believe that the housing becomes probably the most critical element or issue to be addressed, along with it becomes an inverse relationship with crime. As I'm walking through, these different wards and talking to people, that becomes an issue. Like, what are they going to do with this house? What are they going to do with this vacant building? What are they going to do with the Quaker Oats building? What are they going to do with the old Kmart building? Why have these buildings been sitting for 25 years? And as a candidate, quite naturally, I can't answer that question. But I do recognize that you definitely have to have a plan. You have to have at least a concept. And you start from that concept and you build out. And so looking at ways to start with affordable housing that doesn't begin with tearing houses down and not putting anything back helps to erode not only our population in the city of Kankakee, but it serves as eyesores. The property may not be the most pleasing, but with a little money, and as one of my good friends, Nate Tone, would say, a little love, you can bring that property back to a standard of excellence.
All right, we're at the segment of the closing statements. Dr. Porter, you can start. You have a 2-minute closing statement, followed by you, Mayor.
Electing a mayor is much more than choosing one of us on April 9th. It is about the direction of the city for the next 4, 8, and 12 years. This current leadership has had enough time to make more than cosmetic improvements just before election. Anyone driving around town or visiting or a resident can see what direction this community is going in. While Bradley and Bourbonnais are building up, Kankakee is boarding up. You can have either results or excuses, but not both. With a shrinking job base, 16% unemployment, high taxes, shrinking revenue, and one of the highest property taxes in the state, I am sure we all will agree that change is indeed necessary. The mayor has spoken to a balanced budget and stability. Look around you, ladies and gentlemen. Whether it's a hard bottom or soft bottom, we're still at the bottom. Just look at the growth of Bradley and Bourbonnais. Why can't we do the same? We are larger, and we are the county seat. We deserve better. In closing, I want to end with I received one of the most important and impressive compliments as it relates to this entire campaign. There was a young 9-year-old whose father I used to mentor and coach, and he made this statement. He saw a picture of me, and my head is not this big, just for clarifications, on Facebook. And he said, Dad, who is that? Is that President Obama? He said, no, son. He said, is that Dr. King? He said, no, son. He said, well, who is it? And his father paused and kind of looked at him and said, well, I don't know who he is, but I know one thing. He is a leader. And so all I'm asking for is, once again, on April 9th, that you give me a chance to change the city of Kankakee for the betterment of all citizens. Thank you.
Mayor Epstein.
Thank you. This has been an interesting and informative evening. This debate was really a job interview for the position of Chief Executive Officer of a $26 million business that employs 300 people and provides services to 27,000 residents, the city of Kankakee. As with any job interview, the candidate must present a set of qualifications for the job in question. Those qualifications include experience, leadership skills, and a proven track record that you have the ability to do the job. The job of mayor is not an internship program, nor is it on-the-job training. Months after being elected, I know you've heard me say this over and over, I was called upon to defend the city in front of the Chicago media and the editorial boards of the Tribune and Crane Chicago business. Had I not been experienced, we wouldn't have that taxpayer money today. There are striking differences between the two candidates, and I think that was evident tonight. Running for mayor is the easiest thing you can do. I did it. You can say and you can promise whatever you want. Being mayor is a very difficult and challenging job. No one knows what challenges the next 4 years will bring. But as an election approaches, the residents of Kankakee will need to ask themselves who has the experience and knowledge to lead this city for the next 4 years, who has managed and balanced a government budget, and who has proven they will fight for the interests of the city and for the taxpayers. The only promise I make is the one I made 4 years ago. If reelected, I will work hard and to the best of my capabilities to represent all of the residents and to continue the substantial progress the city has made. No one individual can do this alone. Aldermen, city employees, and most importantly, the residents of this community, we all share in the responsibility to make this city a great place to live. Thank you.
Again, on behalf of the officers and the members of the Kankakee County branch of the NAACP, Dr. Porter, we'd like to thank you for participating. Mayor Epstein, again, and you, the audience. Thursday night here at 6 o'clock, we will have a candidate.